Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to the Wisdom of John Hardy, and I'm really excited to be able to have this episode and talk with John, because anyone that's lived in Australia for the last 50 years will be familiar. If you don't know John's name, you'll be familiar with the stories, and I'll share those with you in a minute. But remembering that, we're trying to get below the shallow, superficial level of tips, tricks, hacks, shortcuts that the world seems to be obsessed with today, and dig into the deeper wisdom of strategies and success and leadership, and particularly stewardship, that is repeatable. You didn't just do it once, you did it twice, you did it 3 times, you did it 4 times, and really achieve something significant each and every time in different settings with that. And, in a world that is complex politically, socially, economically, commercially, we need that kind of leadership, that kind of stewardship. And John is one of those leaders over decades and decades of retail leadership in Australia, with brands that anyone living in Australia will be familiar with. And so barbecues galore, Amart Furniture, the Fusion retail brands. Now, that's a range of brands across footwear and apparel, but if you think Colorado and Williams, they live inside that stable. But John, perhaps what's most notable, of course, is the Godfreys brand. And you just said before we started, you made your own television commercials for how long?
35 years.
35 years as the leader of the Godfreys brand. And John was the leader of the Godfreys brand through its boom years as a retail brand in Australia. And retail's a tough market, John, to have that kind of repeated success. I've just rattled off, for anyone overseas, I've just rattled off some of the biggest brands in Australia that I suspect, this is not a number that I have, but I would be surprised if greater than 80% of the country at some point haven't eaten off a barbecue or
Cleaned the carpet.
Cleaned with,
or slept on a mattress.
Exactly. That's come through, one of the brands that
That's right.
that you've led. And retail's a tough market, right? It's a tough place to operate in.
Yeah.
So I'm so looking forward to this, to unpack it. I'm thrilled that you're able to give us this time.
Fine, thank you.
And it's just interesting when you think about retail. And we interviewed Alice Barbary, who leads Universal Brand, and she was talking about the kind of workforce you often get in retail. Sometimes they're between careers or jobs, or between university and school or whatever. It's a pretty unique place in terms of the sort of workforce that you might be dealing with. It's a unique environment in terms of the markets you're playing in, business to consumer. It's a tough market. You don't get to form the same kind of relationships as you might in enterprise sales. What do you, just to contextualize for people, what are the things that really make retail so different, and I think more challenging for a leader of a retail company, which needs volume, it needs presence, it needs visibility and everything else?
Well, for me, I was very fortunate. When I was in my early 20s, I decided I wanted to have a career change, and I decided that I wanted to be in sales.
Yes.
And I applied for a number of jobs, and people said, well, you're too young and you haven't got any experience. And I thought, well, where do you get experience? And then someone said to me, if you can survive knocking on doors for a living for 6 months, you'll be able to sell anything. And so I applied for a job selling vacuum cleaners door to door. And I thought, in 6 months' time, I'll get a real job. Anyway, 45 years later, I was the CEO of that business. We had 40% market share in Australia. We were extremely profitable. And I'd built a sales culture in that business that was quite enviable for other retailers. People were always trying to poach my staff. And anyway, we had a very successful business. But unfortunately, the founder of the business died and his family wanted the money, so we had to sell it. So we sold it to a private equity group, and anyway, that didn't really work out for me, and it didn't work out for them either in the long run. But the thing that stands out for me, and the thing that is sort of transferable from every business, is I find that most businesses that I've been involved with, they spend a fortune on their store fit out, they spend a fortune on their point of sale, their web design, they do all that, but they leave the last 5 yards to chance. The last 5 yards is from the lease lines to the cash register.
Yeah.
And the salespeople, they don't invest in their salespeople. And my philosophy has always been that these are the people that determine whether you make a sale or not. And if you can motivate them and get them and have a culture where they all want to succeed, and you give them the tools and you train them how to do it, and it's not rocket science, but pretty basic selling skills. You give them that, and then you reward them, then the business will just goes from strength to strength. And I thought when I did this at Godfreys, we were extremely successful when we sold the business. But then it didn't work out for me with the private equity group. They wanted to change everything that I'd built for 45 years, and it was just, they didn't like me and I didn't like them, so we called it quits. And then I decided that I'd try retirement, and I did that for 3 weeks, and I just couldn't do it. Every time the phone would ring, my wife would say, "You better answer it. It might be a job." And fortunately, I think it was the Bank of Scotland rang me and said, "Look, Barbecues Galore are in really trouble, and can you go and have a look at them?" So I did, and I looked at it and I thought, I can do something with this business. And all I did, and I got paid a lot of money for doing this as well, but all I did was just develop a sales culture and train the people on how to conduct themselves during a sale process. I did, go to China and develop some new product and things like that that helped. But that turned that business around in 3 years, and we were making. When I went there, they had a mountain of debt, and that's why the bank didn't want to finance them. But anyway, we in 3 years we cleared off the debt, and we were making 5 or 6 times the profit they were making when I went there. So we were able to sell it. And we sold the business to another private equity group who owned Amart Furniture. And they said, "Look, we've got a few problems. Can you come and sort that out?" So I went there, and honestly, so it was just unbelievable. It was exactly the same thing. No, they'd spent a fortune on everything, but left everything to chance with the salespeople. And for me, I thought, this is so simple stuff. And, anyway, 3 years later, we developed a sales culture with some sales training, and everybody was motivated. And the business turned around and it was ready for sale. And so then I said to my wife, "That's it, I'm done, finished, never work again. And, throw a dart at the map, wherever you want to go, we'll go for holiday." On the way home from the airport, someone rang me from Namura Bank and said, "What do you know about shoes?" And I said, "The only thing I know about shoes is they buy them two at a time." Anyway, they said, "We've got this business that's losing an obscene amount of money every year." And they said, "Can you go and have a look at it?" And it just shows that, whether you're selling mattresses or barbecues or furniture or anything, the problems seem to be the same. And it was exactly the same with the shoe business. And just by giving the staff some basic sales skills, cutting out the silly things where they're spending money stupidly, but we cut all that out and just looked at what is the thing that drives the business, and the thing that drives the business is stuff. And anyway, we went from making an obscene loss every year to making a profit of 5 million, and was able to sell the business to another to a privately owned company, and they've kept the same sales training in place, and they're going from strength to strength, and it's really that business is succeeding. But so my message is, I get paid a lot of money for doing this, but it's just the basic things. Like it's just
Yeah.
treat the people with respect and give them the tools, and and develop a sales culture, and it'll pay dividends for you. And sometimes I think, I'm getting money under false pretenses for doing this, but honestly, not that hard. So this is not the normal thing where people say, oh well, if I do this, this, and this, it all works. But for me, the basic thing is the people that drive your business are the people that the coalface, and if you give them the tools and make them feel like that they're empowered. You listen to them, and you create this culture of a sales culture. They'll do wonders for you.
There is so much that I want to unpack in all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
I had some other questions I want to go through, but I actually want to make sure people get the messages loud and clear, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've noticed when I talk to people who have real wisdom,
Yeah.
they usually say something like, it's not really rocket science. It's really so obvious. It's so simple. And yet no one's doing this thing that they see as simple, right? So I think one of the hallmarks of wisdom is when somebody sees the pattern that is the most obvious and simple thing that no one else wants it to be that simple, right? Or
Yeah.
common sense is not common. That's the problem with it, right? So, but I have to start with, you decided in your 20s you wanted a career change. You've barely started a career in your 20s.
Well, when I left school, I thought I wanted to be an engineer,
Right.
and I and my parents didn't have any money, and my father had been in the war, and all of that, and so I did a trade and became a toolmaker, and which has helped me enormously
Yeah.
in developing new products because I can go to a factory and they can't pull the wool over my eyes because I know what I'm talking about when I can read a drawing, I can understand mechanics and things. But when I finished that course, I won a scholarship and to do mechanical engineering, which is what I thought I wanted to do, but then it just wasn't me. It was not me at all, and I wanted to get into retail, and and I got knocked back at so many jobs because they said you're too young and you have no experience. And I thought, well, where do you start? And then someone did give me some really good advice, and they said, look, if you want to succeed in sales, get a job knocking on doors, and if you can do that for 6 months, you'll be fine. And but the thing that really taught me was the value of a customer, the value of a lead, and the value of a customer. And if anyone wants to really upset me in business, if they burn a customer, when a customer comes into the store and they burn a customer, that just sets me right off.
Mm.
I can't stand that because I know how hard it is when you're knocking on doors to get someone that's vaguely interested in buying a vacuum cleaner. It's pretty hard. So I really value that someone walks into my store or one of my stores. That's a big start, and
Mm.
so
Well, of course, that's not just retail, that's every business. The highest cost is the initial acquisition of the client.
that's
Um,
true.
and then whether you're business to business or business to consumer, whether it's enterprise selling, account management, taking that lead and turning it into a converted sale.
Yeah,
The one thing that gives any business certainty is revenue certainty from sales. You know,
yes,
debt and borrowing doesn't give you certainty. Capital raising doesn't give you certainty. It gives you an injection, but it doesn't give you certainty. The
yeah,
exchange of money from revenue because you delivered value is what gives
yeah,
a business certainty. So sales has to be seen as driving the business. It pays for
yeah.
everything.
That's
And
right.
it seems like such a simple formula, but actually it's not, because there's layers of complexity under the idea of give people the tools and set the environment for them to be successful. The environment always wins. And so
Yes,
if you give a neurosurgeon a butter knife and say that person needs surgery, you're just not going to get a good job, right? Because they don't have the tools, they don't have the environment they need.
That's right.
So many people forget the importance of the environment, which includes training and clarity around expectation. I think then, that you said it several times, set a culture of sales, whereas a lot of
Yeah.
people hate the idea of sales. And then the third thing was reward them so they're motivated. This is
Yes.
pretty simple math that is proven to be repeatable by your deployment of that across multiple companies. But I think that's deployable across every business
Yes.
has to sell, you know. It's just a formula that works. So there's so much to unpack in the story that you told and what comes out of it. And yet my experience with sales teams, and we work with sales teams right around the world. The other thing that was interesting, sorry, that you said you started, um, did you say as a tool maker?
Yes.
Yeah, no, and so you can read they can't pull the wool over because you can read a drawing. We help
Yeah.
people build visual models to capture complex ideas and sell them, right?
Yeah.
A big idea usually appears in the physical world as a drawing first,
Yes.
not as a set of words. That head-to-hand ability that comes from kind of trade, being able to read a drawing and then know what the end product should look like, is
Yeah.
it's a skill that I fear we're losing. Um, but let's step into. I just want to explore. I would normally explore this idea of stewardship later in the call, but
Yeah.
you were leading companies for a founder with Godfrey, who obviously you felt some real, um, commitment to and loyalty to. But you're also leading companies that have investors and things like that. You're really being a
Yeah.
steward of those companies
Yes.
in the most senior role. And I'm interested in how you think about that role when you are stewarding other people's investments. You're stewarding other people's reputations, like the founder's reputation is on the line with Godfrey's.
Yeah.
You're not the owner, but you are stewarding it. How do you approach leadership?
Every business I've been involved in, I always think of it as my own business, and every decision that I make, whether it's spending money or investing or should I buy this property and I think if this was my business, would I do it? And usually the answer is pretty simple. Then you think, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't touch it with a 40-foot pole. So I leave it alone. But I've always every business that I've been in, I'm boots and all. So I'm completely in. But I always look at it as if it was my own business, and usually. I have a vested interest in the outcome anyway, and when the business is sold, I've usually negotiated an arrangement for that. But I've always any business I've ever been involved in, I've always thought it was my own business, and that's how I view it. And I think if this is my money, would I spend it? And that's how I tackle it, and that usually works out right. Certainly I've made some mistakes over the years. I've done some things that you think, oh, I'm going to do that again. But generally, if you adopt that attitude, if it was my money, would I spend it? No, I wouldn't. Well, don't do it. And that's how I've always addressed it.
I suppose we could extend that, and if they were my resources, if it was my time, I was asking myself to
Yes,
spend on this. If it was my money, what would I do with it? If it was my infrastructure, if it was my reputation, so
that's
if
right.
my
Yes,
resources, what would I do with them? Yeah,
and lots of times, with Godfrey's, it was my reputation because when we first started to advertise on television, how this came about, our ad agency came and they brought some talent that was pretty cheap. And I said, look, they're so bad. I could do better than that. But I just meant it to say how bad they were. Next thing I know, they said, well, okay, you do it then. And I thought, oh, geez, how am I going to do this? But anyway, I made an ad I picked up a bowling ball. And, because the
yeah, I
thing for
remember the ad.
me, the thing that I always remember when I made a TV commercial, I look at TV commercials today and I think, what the hell was that about? I have no idea. But my ads were always, there was always a feature, a benefit, and a call to action, and that was the formula that I used for 35 years. And it got us to where we were the market leader in floor care, and we were enormously profitable. And but it was just sticking to the formula. I look at ads now and I see people, selling cars, and they've got some bloke buying a tow ball or something, and I have no idea what the ad was for. I see a real estate ad, and a bloke, is driving around on a lounge, and I think, well, what's all this about? What's happened to the formula?
Yeah.
They've got away from it, and so I that's how I've always looked at the businesses. Like, if I'm going to make an ad, it's got to have a feature, a benefit, and a call to action, and to
And I
make
can
it.
remember the bowling ball ad.
Yeah, well, and that was copied all around the world. People used to send me ads. This is South America. Someone in South America has pinched your ad. That was the reason I did that, was because we used to send out surveys. Why do you buy a vacuum cleaner? And people said, "Oh, I want something really powerful." And I thought, how can I make it powerful? What can I pick up? And so I picked up a bowling ball, and then, a 16-pound bowling ball, if it picks that up, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we had a call to action at the end, but the thing was enormously successful. Even now, I haven't done this for years, but even now I get on a plane sometimes, and the host will say, "There's not a bowling ball in that bag you're putting up there, is it?"
So let's talk about customer engagement a little bit, because this is prospect engagement. And then I loved what you said about so many businesses do all the work up to the last 5 yards or 5 meters between
Yeah,
the door and the cash register, which is actually where the action occurs. So let's talk about customer engagement, and let's talk about it through two lenses. There's always talk about the world is changing. I mean, with AI, you would think that the world is just being tipped on its head. um, but certainly some things might change about the marketplace and how people shop and buy these days. There's no
yeah.
doubt online shopping exists, but there's probably also some principles that still seem to be true and possibly always will be true. And so I'm interested in some of your perspectives around customer engagement and connecting to a marketplace. And what do you think is probably not going to change, irrespective of where the world goes, when you're selling to customers? And we'll do this in a retail setting. What are some of the things you think aren't going to change because people are people?
Look, I think people appreciate being sold to. For me, in any business I've ever been involved in, and sometimes you get snowed under and you get, all that. But every business I've ever been in, I've always dedicated at least 4 hours every week. I work in a shop as a salesman, and I find I can read millions of reports. I can look at sheets, profit loss. I look at all that stuff, but I can find out what's really going on by talking to customers every week. I find out what's going on, and they'll tell you, well, Harvey's got a special on, or someone else has got a special on. I know everything that's going on, but also by working in the shop as a salesman, everybody sees me doing that, and they know that's part of the culture and that's what they're expected to do. But I find out that things don't change. People, when they buy, why do people buy anything? They've got a problem.
Yeah.
And, if I can offer a solution to the problem, but some people don't realize how big their problem is, and I can help them solve that. And by offering a mattress or a barbecue or furniture or whatever, I can do that. But I find that, to keep in touch with your customers, if you spend 4 hours every week, and I dedicate that, and even selling women's shoes, now that's a challenge. But selling women's shoes, for me, that was really hard. But I did that every week for 4 hours, at least 4 hours every week, and I learned so much about footwear and the culture and the business, and all of that. And then, and after 3 years of doing that, you get to be a bit of an expert on women's shoes, which I never thought I'd ever would be.
Are we
But that's
running the are we running the risk of losing some of that market-facing intel as we move more and more towards, online, click the button, make the purchase kind of thing, or because there's a lot of data underneath that online
Yes,
platforms capture for you, but you're sort of talking about the emotional intel of the customer.
that's right. And, and maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, but I buy things online, but I don't like it because there's no emotional attachment and there's no one there to solve my problem or advise me. And sometimes, if I'm going to buy something that I'm unfamiliar with, I need some help. I need someone to say, well, have you thought about this? And at the end of the day, you make a decision based on, the information that you've got. And, getting the information off the internet is not that easy sometimes. So look, I think the internet and online sales are here to stay. That's for sure. But I still think there is an opportunity for people with a personal engagement, where you listen to people's problems and then you say, well, I'll give you some options. And if I were in your shoes, this is what I would look at, and the reason I do that is this, this, and this.
Mm.
And you appreciate being sold. I
Where
do,
do you,
and
well, I think people, as long as the selling isn't the industrial age kind of pressure and, you know,
no, 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 no,
push and
no,
shove
not
selling, I think people do want to be sold to because they want to be helped. They want to be
yeah,
helped to make a decision.
yeah.
Where do you think the future of retail is headed? I mean, you're obviously moving in circles where retail is being talked about all day, every day. Where does the conversation seem to be suggesting that the future of retail is headed? We know online is here to stay. We know that increasing data tools and capture tools and everything else, retargeting through the online marketing and everything. But where does the conversation suggest retail is headed into the
Well, I
future?
think I think the a retail salesperson is an endangered species.
Hmm.
I think they're facing extinction. I'm doing some work with a very well known national brand at the moment. And so the first thing I said to the general manager of sales was, I want to go and work, at the coalface. I want to go and sell your product. And he said, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, if I'm going to help you devise a sales strategy, I need to know how hard it is and what are the issues. And I said, anyway, you must have done this 100 times. He said, I've never done it once.
Wow.
So, oh God help me. this is, but this is the general manager of sales is never face to face with the customer,
Yeah.
and you think, now where is this going? And people for some reason, you know, they think that oh, if I have a glossy brochure or I do a fancy ad or I do a great website development, people will follow, but they won't. Some will, but majority of people, if you want to get the maximum sale that you can possibly get, and people are happy to pay more than they initially thought if it's solving their problem for them.
Hmm.
But that bit seems to be disappearing to me, and that's why I'm in business, I suppose. People keep ringing me up and say, "Come and help me," but and as we said before, I mean, it's just plain like simple common sense. Like you treat your customer with respect, and you understand their issues, and then offer them a solution to the problem, and
Yes.
you'll get the sale. But no one's doing it.
No, well, in every market, um, it's kind of it's an interesting thing, but in every market, one company has to be the most expensive. That
Yeah,
has to be true to have one that is also the cheapest and then have the average in the middle. And usually the most expensive companies are doing pretty well, in honesty.
yeah,
And there's also, a small percentage are the very successful, then there's everybody else. So why isn't everybody doing what the most successful companies are doing? It's an oddity of human behavior. You see success and then you want to invent your own thing and do something different, to that. Customer loyalty is a big deal in retail. in
Yeah.
truth, it's a big deal in every business, but particularly in retail, because people will shop you and leave for price somewhere else if you haven't built a brand or a loyalty with them that is worthy of them staying with it. What are some of the most successful things you've done to get people to really lock into the brand, the customers to really lock into the brand and go, I buy all my vacuum cleaners at Godfreys. I don't even go to the big box stores. I just go straight to Godfreys when need to get my next one. I buy my bags there. I get my detergents there. What are some of the best customer loyalty strategies you've deployed? Because I
Well,
suspect they have transferred to all industries.
that's right. Well, one of the things at Godfrey's that we did, people buy a vacuum cleaner every 5.8 years. That was the time they buy them. So the point of contact was like every 5.8 years. Like you're easily forgotten in that time. So I came up with this plan where we would service the vacuum cleaner free of charge. You buy, a vacuum cleaner from me, I would service it for you every year free of charge, which, we have a service department. It didn't cost me that much to service them, but it brought people back to the store every year. And if they didn't come, I'd ring them up, say, oh, your vacuum cleaner needs a service, like, and it's free, I'll bring it in. They'd bring it in. And then when they came in, we had lots of other products that we could sell as well. But people get used to coming back and they'd say, this is unbelievable service. You're doing something for nothing. And so, yeah, that's right. But, we want to make sure that your vacuum cleaner lasts you 20 years and all that stuff. But every time they'd come back, you'd say, look, we've got this new attachment. Have you seen this? This is really great. And, or even if you only sold bags and filters, it covered the cost of the service, but
Mm.
tied people to you. Then when I went to barbecues, I thought, well, how do I replicate this? No one's going to get their barbecue service. So we devised this way. We gave cooking classes, and you'd be surprised at how few people know how to cook a steak. I mean, I was the worst offender. I thought you put a steak on, just flipped it over and over and backwards and forwards and all of that. But when I went there, they said, you have no idea. They sent me to a cooking class to learn how to cook a steak, because if I'm in the shop selling a barbecue, I need to know how to cook a steak. Anyway, so we came up with cooking classes. You buy a barbecue from us, not only do we make sure that you've got the barbecue, but we'll make sure that you know how to use it, and we'll give you free cooking classes. And honestly, when they came in for the cooking classes, they would buy the rubs, they'd buy the cookbooks, they'd buy the tongs, they'd buy other things. But it's created store traffic. But people would come back to us and they go, it's great service. That was like we're getting something for nothing. Here we're getting a free, and we'd put something out there, and they'd eat it. They'd eat the stuff at the cooking class. But every cooking class we ever ran, we made a profit because people bought things while they were there. But it tied people to us, and then when I got into the shoe business, I thought, how the hell do we do this? So we came up with like you buy a pair of shoes from me for $100, and then we'd say, look, I owe you some money, and then we had this loyalty program where you got 5%. So every $100 you spent, you got $5 towards your next pair of shoes, and that loyalty program was worth unbelievable amount of money. I don't want to divulge how much it was, but it was a lot of money. But it gave us a way to keep in contact with that customer, because we would send them a statement like, you've got $25, and we've got these great shoes. But people would come back to you because they've got a credit with you. And that loyalty program was unbelievable. How that worked and how that generated sales for us. But it also had this brand loyalty where people say, I'm not going anywhere else, and they get to know the size, because, with shoe manufacturers, all shoe sizes are not consistent, and but with all of ours they were, and you know you knew if you were a female and you were a 36, you know, size 36, you knew whatever you bought in a 36 it was going to fit you, you know.
Yeah.
So and we developed an online business with that too, but they still got the loyalty payment. So everywhere I've ever been, I've always tried to. The first sale is always the most expensive and the hardest. The second sale is always the easy one. And if you could tie those people to you, whether it was coming back to get a free service on your vacuum cleaner or whatever, or a cooking class, or you know the $5, you know, credit on your next pair of shoes, it did tie people to us, and it was amazing how successfully that worked, but how nobody else seems to do that.
Well, I think there's a, there's a key step that you applied in that. So, well, one of the things about business is that the real game in play is often not the one that you can see. There's usually always something going on underneath the surface that people are not necessarily aware of. And so there's multiple currencies in business. There's the money that people spend with you, but there's the currency of time that they're willing to give you. There's the currency of connection. How tied do they want to be to your brand? That's a choice they make. And
Yeah,
they think you're giving them this for free because they're not paying you for the vacuum cleaner service, but they are giving you time to bring it in, to come into the store, to reconnect. There's a currency they're trading in. And the real game
yes,
for you was this currency of connection and time, coming and hanging out with us. What the critical step, of course, was you going to each new business and saying, well, how can I do that again, but in the
yeah,
context of this product that we sell? Barbecues don't get a service every year, so the service is not going to work. But how do I get the same result somehow differently? Let's do cooking classes. And I think that is that willingness to kind of be innovative and step
yeah,
out. So let's lean in on leadership and staff and teams and managers, because you have to bring your team along on some of these things,
yeah.
So let's get into this space of being a leader in modern organizations today, and particularly if you want to drive innovation. What do you think some of the real qualities of leadership are that we need to hold on to? I'm not sure that the world is being well led right now. What are some of the qualities of leadership we just have to try and hold on to that produce great results?
Well, I think I'm probably the worst offender at this in the beginning. When I was at Godfreys, I was there for 45 years. So I did everything. You know, I did all the overseas buying. I did the new product. I did the sales training. I did the advertising. Like I did it all. And then and that was great when we were a privately owned business, and that's the way we operated. But then when private equity bought us, they said, well, you know, where's your succession plan? And I thought, well, I'm going to be here forever. Like, well, what's the problem? You know, but really, that was a bit of a wake up call, and so you know, we really didn't have a succession plan, and that was part of the reason I think why. Um, when we parted ways, because I didn't like the way they were running the business, and there was really nobody there that could do everything, and I think that was a mistake, really. But so everywhere else I went, I always tried to bring people along, and you know, sometimes you think, oh, geez, this is hard work. Why can't he see this? You know, but you've persevered, you pick the right person, and the thing that I always look for in people, and it wasn't their academic skills, it wasn't, you know, if they had enthusiasm, I thought I can do anything with these people if they're enthusiastic, and that's the thing I look for. It's the most contagious. You know, people talk about COVID being contagious. You get someone with a good dose of enthusiasm, more contagious than COVID, and you can do something with them. So I've always found I find people that are enthusiastic, and I don't care what their academic qualifications were. If they were enthusiastic, and you know we could work together, then I would bring them along. And the people that I've left behind in other businesses, you would not find more enthusiastic bunch of people, and they're the ones that are successful, and they'll follow the plan. You say, this is the plan, this is what I want you to do, and they'll follow it to the end, and they're enthusiastic about it, and they're the ones that I find that you can do something with.
We recently recorded an episode of the show with someone that's been very involved in training the military in extreme environments and circumstances, and they drew this distinction between, if you can say to someone, I can show you how to do that, that's a skill because it's trainable. But so I can show you how to sell barbecues in a store. That's a skill, that's trainable. But I can't show you how to be enthusiastic. That's an attribute. But that's going to get them further with you. The stuff that you can't train, which is probably not a skill. And we do focus on skills and experience in hiring sometimes, maybe more than we should. It is interesting. What about driving change and innovation when people are resistant to change or innovation? So you would have, you've done, I mean, some of these stories are turnaround stories. So
well,
it's a bit of
unfortunately,
defensiveness,
yeah, well, sometimes people don't want to come with you, and they want to just keep doing what they've always done. And no matter what you do, and you say, well, look, this is a different world now, and this is where we want to go. And sometimes they just say, no, you can't change them. And sometimes you don't have time to spend. I haven't got 5 years here. I've got a short time frame, and I've got to get this done. And if you can't, sometimes you have to have a hard conversation and say, like selling barbecues is maybe not for everyone, and maybe it's not for you. And if I'm holding you back from another role, you feel free to go. And if you don't, well, you're going anyway. So and I've had to make that call, lots and lots of times. In the shoe business, it was top heavy. They were, and Godfrey had some funny old sayings, but one of the things he did say to me, or one of his favourite sayings was that, people who spend without counting go broke without knowing. And I had a lot of them at the shoe business, and no matter what I did, they weren't going to change, so they had to go.
Yeah.
But then I found that the people that were working underneath them, when you talk to them, they'd say, well, I've often wondered why we wasted so much money on things like that. And, and then there were quite a few of them that were quite enthusiastic, and I was able to do something with them. So the people that were underneath these people that could see all this waste of money, I was able to bring them along. And, we turned the business around, like from losing an obscene amount of money to making a profit of 5 in 3 years and getting rid of the debt. That was quite but it was the people that I got were already in the business, but weren't given a voice, weren't allowed to talk, and then but they knew what was needed, and when you start to encourage them and empower them, they delivered, and it was really good to see. And Namura Bank never thought that they'd ever get their money back. We sold the business, and the new owners that bought the business have kept that same culture, and those same people are still in the business, and those people are leading the business when they were sort of playing second fiddle to a lot of people who were gallivanting around the world, not doing much.
It's super interesting, as if you are the the kind of the ultimate leader of the business, if you're in the primary seat of responsibility, or even the layer below that, it's a cautionary tale that we can't judge the culture of a company through the layers of management and the view of management of the culture of the company. You have to be able to look from the bottom up and the top down to understand, how much how much suppressed enthusiasm is there in companies all around the world that
Yeah.
has been suppressed by layers of perhaps leadership. And I'm not saying people are bad people or they're bad leaders. It's just that there is this dilution effect, and
Yeah.
you can't just assume the culture is what's being fed up through the normal channels of reporting, as opposed to what might be really going on, at layers below. So this idea of skipping levels and going and talking to people is pretty interesting. It's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's interesting that they are driving the business today, and they hadn't
That's
been.
right, and successfully too.
Yeah.
And I've left that business some years ago, but if I'm still around the stores and I spend my life in shopping centres, and I go into one of the stores and oh, look at this, hey, what are you doing, and all of this sort of stuff, and they're just so enthusiastic, and it's really good to see, and the business is thriving, which is really good, and I'm no longer there, so
So the message is, don't look at your culture through the lens of a hierarchy. Look
that's
at your
right.
culture through the lens of people, and hire for enthusiasm, as tricky and as difficult as that might be. John, I'm appreciative of your time. I'd love to wrap up with a couple of quick questions for people to kind of know a bit about John. These aren't
Yeah.
about retail. They're just, it's just a quick throwaway, quick response kind of question. If you're up for a couple of those, and then
Yeah,
we'll
sure.
thank you. So if you could travel to any period in history at all, and you get to be an observer at that period, when would it be, and why would you want to go there?
Wow, that's a question and a half.
It is.
Look, I'd like to go back to the early '60s when I started in retail, because it took me 40 years to learn learn a lot about retail. I'd like to be able to go back there, as an early young 20-odd-year-old, and know what I know now. Like, I'd have so much fun.
Yeah. And if you could master any skill, but you didn't have to practice, you just prick your fingers, you got the skill, what would it be?
Oh, and it'd have to be catch more fish, because no, my passion is retail and work, but my hobby is fishing, and no, I joke with that, but no, I apply the same thing to when I'm fishing. Everything I switch off, and I'm there to catch fish, and that's what I do. That's what I do. So
Fair enough.
no, but no, but really, I think what would I like to be able to do that I can't do now? Probably play golf or something like that. But no, I'm quite comfortable with what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's a satisfied person that doesn't have that skill they want to get. Just do what you're doing that's better. Thank you so much, John, for giving us this time. It gives rise to a challenge, not just for people who might be leading retail companies, but anyone who's leading any company. Let's not try and disguise the fact that the thing that gives your company a level of business certainty is the ability to generate revenue, and revenue comes from sales. And
Yes,
sales happens in the last 5 yards, the last 5 meters between the door and the cash register, or between the moment the Zoom is turned on and you start having a sales conversation to the moment that it's
yes,
turned off. Um, treat people well and with respect. That's both the customers and your salespeople, but the environment always wins. So set an environment that can win. Set a culture of sales. Don't make sales something everyone's trying to avoid. Make sales something everyone wants to do. Foster a culture of enthusiasm, and then motivate people by rewarding them well for what they do.
yes,
And this seems a simple formula, transferable from company to company, proven by you, John, having done it in multiple nationally recognized brand names in Australia. And
yeah.
sometimes we overcomplicate. Sometimes it really is as simple as the wisdom you've shared with us today. So thank you very, very much. And my
Pleasure.
challenge to everybody would be go and drive a culture of sales. Thank you, John.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure talking to you, Simon.
Yes,
Thank you.
it was great. Thank you.